Good morning. You're listening to the Mac and Jack Sports Show on Northeast Streaming Sports.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Mac and Jack Sports Show, streaming live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch, on Mac Sports and the Northeast Streaming Sports Facebook pages. The Northeast Streaming Sports YouTube, also on Twitter and Instagram. Like, share, comment, and please subscribe to the Northeast Streaming Sports YouTube channel for all the great Northeast Streaming Sports shows. Our website is nessp.info. Check it out, shows, information, stores, and links to those stores. I'm Mac with your co-host, Jack Hirsch, legendary boxing writer and former president of the Boxing Writers Association of America, bringing you national sports with special focus on the Northeast professional sports from New York, Boston, and Philly. Good morning, Jack. How you doing? And welcome.
Good morning, Mac. How are you?
I'm doing all right.
Yesterday, Mac. I mean, I can't believe I'm saying this. I actually missed you.
Jack, I missed you too.
I need to vent against someone, and you're the easiest one I could vent on. So
yes. So we, of course, for people that weren't here yesterday, Jack is down now in Florida on his annual trip where he goes down and gets warmer than it is up here anyway, and down to his, I guess, do you have a summer home down there, Jack?
No, I have a winter place, but with COVID and all, I didn't really go. I like to shuttle back and forth, even in the winter, New York, Florida, back and forth.
Yes. So
I like to keep on the move, Mac.
Yeah, you keep on the move.
I like to be stationary. You might not mind being stationary. I like to always keep moving.
Yes. That's you look like you do move quite a bit, Jack, and that aerodynamic from the lack of hair, you probably move very quickly.
I'll tell you. I mean, I listened to the show yesterday.
Yes.
I listened to the show. It actually was good.
Yes.
Credit. It was good without me.
Yeah, well, it's not the same, Jack.
No, it wasn't the same. I add a little extra to it, but it was a good show. Kudos to yourself, Keith Engel, Pags. I mean, you guys did a nice job. I enjoyed listening to it.
Even Carlos missed your input, Jack, as we all did.
Well,
so
Carlos is being polite here.
Yeah.
Thank you, Carlos.
Right.
Your input too. I couldn't see it. I was driving.
Right, there you go. So, Jack, there is so much sports going on at once today. And the folks out there, we have a bunch of guests coming in today. Today we have Carter B. with the NHL coverage of the Hockey League. He'll be up first. We have the Iceman, John Scully, boxing icon, former Golden Glove champion, light heavyweight, middleweight contender, analyst. He does a lot with boxing, Jack. Writer, too. And we also got a former welterweight champion, Paulie Malignaggi. Thank you, Malignaggi. I will get that right.
Not only a former world champion in the ring, but an award-winning broadcaster. He won the Boxing Writers Association of America's Taub Award, meaning a Best Broadcaster of the Year award. He's previously won that.
Well, it's going to be great to have him on, too. And then we got Josh Rubin coming on approximately 9:30 to give you a Mets, a real look at the Mets this year and what expectations are and what the Mets expectations are.
What a day, Mac. What a day to talk about the Mets.
Yeah.
Of course, we're going to discuss Francisco Lindor's extension and go over that, I'm sure.
Sure. And, they should be excited over there in Mets land with the new owner, new catcher, new shortstop, and all the great hitters they had there last year. We'll see what happens with them. So let's take a quick look at the NCAA Final Four, Jack. I was on a Final Four special for Northeast Streaming Sports last night, and you have one of the historically greatest teams in basketball history, UCLA, the Cinderella this year, against the powerhouse that used to be the Cinderella, Gonzaga. So these two teams are going to square off. I think Gonzaga will probably beat them, maybe by a lot. Yeah. But I give UCLA credit. I mean, they fought their way through a lot of games, winning a lot of close ones against very good teams. So, I think Gonzaga will win that. But, man, what a job UCLA did this year getting back into it, Jack.
Oh, yeah, no, listen, absolutely. And think of what UCLA could take away from this. They could always say this team, they went to the Final Four. Beating Gonzaga, what a chore. They're kind of like playing with house money. The pressure's really on Gonzaga in this game.
True. And then on the other side, in the other game, Jack, you got Houston, who was, great at one time, too. They're finally getting back to the Final Four after like 37 years from what I read, playing Baylor. And Baylor was the other number one rated team in the country before the brackets when they were originally.
It should be Rutgers, Mac. They should have finished Houston off. Rutgers should be there. I mean, I could just imagine how Rutgers is feeling watching Houston's run into the Final Four. A team they had beaten, they let that game get away.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'll tell you, Houston, USC was my Final Four pick. They didn't make it in. But Houston is a very young, exciting defensive team, and I'd give them a puncher's chance against Baylor. We'll see what happens.
Mac, 37 years ago, I guess you're talking about that Houston team. Hakeem Olajuwon, Clyde Drexler.
Yes.
Having those two guys, two future NBA Hall of Famers on the same team. And they still somehow never won the NCAA tournament.
Right. And the coach of Houston right now has not only been in 15 NCAA tournament games, but he was a former offensive coach of the Houston Rockets. So he's got experience there, and it'll be interesting to see how he matches up with Drew over there.
Matt, let me ask you your opinion. What would the point spread be if Houston University played the Houston Rockets right now? What would the point spread? Would the Rockets be favored by 2-3 points?
That's a great question.
No gimmicks. Team against team.
That's a great question.
2 out of 3. I like the Rockets in 3 games.
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And as you mentioned,
I had that talk with Kentucky. Remember when Kentucky under John Calipari, not that long ago, had those great teams? People would ask, who would win against Kentucky, against the Minnesota Timberwolves when the Timberwolves are bad? They're bad again, the Timberwolves. They're terrible. But when the Timberwolves were really a weak team, that was an interesting discussion. The best college basketball team against the worst NBA team. Can the best college basketball team, if they were a true powerhouse, can they compete?
No. I mean, there's no way. There's 2 different styles of basketball, Jack. Just like in football, when they talk about Alabama beating the worst NFL team, couldn't happen. You're talking pros.
That Alabama team last year on a given day, could they win an NFL game? Could they have beaten the Jacksonville Jaguars?
No.
If Nick Saban had a chance to get them ready, really get them ready to play the Jacksonville Jaguars of last year, I'm not that sure that Alabama team couldn't have.
There's no way, Jack. They're not man strong yet, Jack. They're college strong. They just haven't matured.
Remember years ago, the college all-stars would play the NFL champions, and they would win once in a while. So yeah. Right.
But again, Jack, that was a team that played constantly against an NFL team that was working in the offseason and not playing constantly together. So, it's a little different back then. But as I said, Iceman comes on. I got some news I want to talk to him about, which will be really interesting to see if he knows what's going on with this because of the way he supports former boxers and that are in
right. You told me before the show, and I'm not that familiar with what you John Scully is very, very involved with certain, programs helping fighters in need. I am too, to an extent, with the groups I've been involved with. But maybe John is familiar this story that you're going to talk about later. I'm not going to discuss it anymore. I'm going to let you, introduce it.
Okay, cool. And as I said, we got the former, I shouldn't say ex, former
Paulie Malignaggi.
I mean, a great a fighter that was very tough, Jack. I mean, he took a lot of punishment. He went with it.
No, don't tell him that. Don't tell him Paulie took a lot of punches. Paulie was slick.
He was.
He boxed, he stuck, he moved. He won't like me saying this. He had no power. Power, but he was a master boxer. He took a good punch.
I agree.
When he got hit, he had a good chin. He wasn't a hard puncher, and he'll have to admit that.
Yeah.
Paulie you talk about underachievers and overachievers. He overachieved in his career, and I mean this as a big compliment to him.
Well, Jack, we're backstage right now. Let's see if we get Carter to bring his computer up a little bit so we can get his whole profile in there, or I should say front-on shot. With our hockey coverage, Carter does it better than anybody I know, and I can't wait to bring him up and get him going and rolling on. A lot of big things happen in hockey also. So, without further ado, yes, sir. Carter, how you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing good, guys. How are you?
Carter, you know who's doing a lot better than you?
Who might that be?
The Buffalo Sabres.
I would imagine so, yeah.
I mean, it's been very, very interesting this year in hockey. A lot of new things going on, a lot of different teams that were supposed to be good and aren't good, and teams that were projected to have a stronger season that aren't having a strong season right now. And I want to get right to you on in the Central Division. You got the Lightning, but the Panthers have come up and tied them for first place. You got the Hurricanes right in with the grasp of both of those teams. And, Chicago has won 6 in a row right now, Carter. They've beaten the Stars twice. They've beaten a couple teams twice, playing them twice in a row to jump up there with the, I think it's the Coyotes that they're tied with right now. So, I mean, out there in the West, is Tampa Bay really the dominating favorite out there, or does the Panthers and the Hurricanes have something to say about that?
Well, if we're looking at all the teams in the Central Division on paper, I still think the Tampa Bay Lightning are the best team in that division. No knock on the Florida Panthers or anything. I think they're having a really strong year on their own, but I just think that if these two teams were to face off in a best-of-7 series, I think Tampa would win nearly every single time. I mean, again, that's no knock on the Panthers. They are having an amazing year, but I just don't know how long this success can really be sustained for. I do think they'll drop off at some point. For me, it's just really a matter of when. And, outside of the two Florida teams, like you said, Carolina's having a strong season. It's Nashville that you were talking about that had won 6 straight games. So they're definitely crawling themselves back into the playoff picture as of late. And, I mean, as of right now, it's going to be a tough battle between Nashville and Chicago for that last playoff spot. It's going to be entertaining to see. And even a team like Columbus, I mean, they're only 3 points out of it right now. So there's still quite a few teams that could really, really make a push for the last playoff spot in the Central before it's all said and done.
So is Rocco Grimaldi? Is he a legitimate star over there, Carter? And the goalie too. I mean, Saros looks really good. I mean, he has a pretty good save percentage. Are they going to make any noise at the end?
See, it's tough for me because they've struggled a little bit all year. Granted, Nashville has also had some serious injury problems. They just announced that I believe 5 or 6 of their players, including Philip Forsberg and Matt Duchene, two big offensive pieces that they have on this lineup are considered week to week with injuries. So if they can find ways to really rack up points without guys like Forsberg and Duchene, and they've proved that they can over this last stretch of these last few games. They've won 6 in a row. They have another game tonight against the Dallas Stars, so it'll be interesting if they can continue to put an impressive point streak together like they have been. I don't know if I'm necessarily picking them to beat a team like Tampa in the first round, but I do think if Nashville keeps playing the way that they're playing right now, they're playing just some of the best hockey that I've seen them play over the course of this abbreviated season, and I think this could be an entertaining team to watch. I don't know if they'll get past the first round, but they could be a team to look out for.
So,
Do
Carlos,
we tend to overrate a team that wins the cup the year before? Let's say hypothetically, let's say the Tampa Bay Lightning didn't win the Stanley Cup last year. Let's say they lost to Dallas in the finals. Let's just pretend for a moment. Would we be holding them in such high esteem this year, making them the clear favorite? I think there's too much of a carryover effect in our attitude.
Do you mean we're making Tampa the favorite, or we're making Dallas
Tampa's
the favorite?
the favorite to repeat as Cup champions this year. But isn't that based in large part on them winning it last year?
I wouldn't say so. I think based on the season that they're having this year, they're proving that they're a legitimate Stanley Cup contender. And I know that we've brought up the point on this show before, and I still think that just because you're only playing teams in your division, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're a good team or a bad team. I think that it means you match up well against other teams in your division, and there are certain teams that I look at that are doing well right now, particularly if we're looking at the Central Division. I'm really looking at the Florida Panthers here. I don't know if the Panthers can make a deep playoff run. I think this is more kind of like a flash in the pan type thing. But if we're looking at the Tampa Bay Lightning, this is a team that's been at the top of the NHL standings for the last couple of seasons. They've had a lot of playoff success. They've been to a couple of Eastern Conference finals over the course of the past 5 or 6 seasons. So this team knows how to win hockey games, especially in the playoffs. And I'm going to be honest, I don't see any team beating the Tampa Bay Lightning in a 7-game series right now. They look really, really good.
So in the West, moving from the Central, you got Colorado now in first, which surprises me somewhat. I mean, I know the Avalanche are a good team, but they're in there. The Blues have lost 4. We talked about how good the Blues were playing. They're in fourth now. And the Avalanche, I mean, they beat Arizona 9-3, Carter. I mean, that's a thumping in hockey. And now, so how potent is this offense of Colorado?
Colorado has probably the best offense in the NHL, and I don't really think it's that close. I think that when you're looking at a team like the Avalanche on paper, the unique thing about them is the fact that they get so much scoring from their defensemen, right? A lot of the time you look at these Stanley Cup contenders and they're really getting their scoring from their top offensive talent. But, one guy that I really want to point out for the Colorado Avalanche here is Sam Gerard. He's been a defenseman who a lot of people have looked at as kind of a second or a third pairing defenseman. Nobody's really seen him as an elite playmaking defenseman. But this season, I think he's proving everybody wrong with that. He's got 5 goals and 23 assists for 28 points in just 33 games. So he's almost at a point per game pace as a defenseman. And when you're looking at the way he's playing this year, he's generating a lot of offense from the back end for this Avalanche team. I think he's one of the favorites for the Norris Trophy for the best defenseman in the league right now. And he's definitely one of the big reasons why this Avalanche team is playing where I think everybody thought they would be at the start of the year.
The Northern Division, a lot of people call it the Canadian Division. Of course, you've got Montreal, and you got the Jets coming up. You've got Canadians still hanging in there. I've heard rumblings from other people that have been on the show and that I've read that maybe this North Division is not that strong, Carter. That even say the Maple Leafs win it, a lot of people think they might even get knocked out, in the first, second round.
I don't know if I necessarily agree with that, Mac. I think At the end of the day, it doesn't really matter how weak your division is. You're still going to take advantage of all of the games that you need to win to get to the playoffs. And realistically speaking, I mean, there's a Canadian team that's guaranteed to make the Final Four, right? You're guaranteed to play teams within your division in both the first and second round. So if the Maple Leafs can find a way to get to the second round and beat that team in the second round to get to the Final Four, I don't know how far they'll go outside of that. I do think that this Maple Leafs team is the best team on paper, at least in the Northern Division, but we know from all sports, I mean, just because you're good on paper doesn't necessarily mean it'll translate to in-game action, right? So, with this Leafs team, I mean, they have struggled a little bit as of late. Like you said before, the Jets and the Oilers are catching up to them a little bit, but overall, I think anyway that the Toronto Maple Leafs are still going to finish first in the Northern Division. After that, it's a bit of a dogfight to see who will kind of claim that second spot, but I think this is Toronto's division to lose.
But Carter, has there ever been a year where we haven't been surprised in the first round? That at least there's one upset, a number 7 seed or whatever, just springs an upset in the first round. I don't think everything is ever gone according to form.
No, that's absolutely not the case, Jack. Everybody gets upset in the first round, right?
Yeah.
You saw it a couple of years ago with the Tampa Bay Lightning. They had a historic season. They won 62 games in the 2018-19 season, and they got swept in the first round by an 8 seed in Columbus. So
unbelievable, yeah.
You never know what's going to happen in the playoffs, right? That's what makes the playoffs so fun. That's what makes them so entertaining to watch. You really don't know who's going to win, no matter where you finish in the standings.
More than the NBA, because it's extremely rare where number 7 or 8 seed is going to upset a number 1 or 2 seed in the NBA. I mean, that's going to happen. A number 8 seed will upset a number 1 once every 20 years in the NBA, maybe. But in hockey, it could happen, a couple of years in a row.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm not trying to knock the NBA here when I say this, but I feel like it's so much harder to win in the NHL than it is in the NBA. In the NHL, you need so much depth. You need a lot of scoring depth. You need 4 lines that can not only grind out a physical game, but you need 4 lines that can score goals. You need 3 defense pairings that are going to be up to par every single night. And sometimes you're going to need a goalie who can steal you games here and there, right? You're not going to win every single playoff game just from outscoring the opponent. You're going to need your goaltender to steal you a couple of games. So at the end of the day, I do think that, a lot of people have said this in the past, and I agree with it 100%. The Stanley Cup is the hardest trophy to win in all of professional sports, and this is part of the reason why. The Stanley Cup playoffs are so much fun, and I'm ready for them to get underway.
I hear you. So in the East, Carter, it's like let's take a turn in first kind of division, right? The Capitals and Isles are, they're tied for first now. The Penguins are surging again. The Bruins are dropping off. And, the Flyers still, their woes continue. And I guess the biggest news is that, as Jack said, Buffalo finally got his first win after, 18 losses in a row. And, I mean, they beat the Flyers last night.
Yeah, and I was actually texting with a couple of my buddies last night about this because it was almost kind of unbelievable that the Sabres were going to break this historic losing streak. This losing streak was something that I've never seen before in my lifetime, at least all the time that I've been paying attention to hockey. And it's because they've tied the Pittsburgh Penguins for the longest losing streak in NHL history. If they would have lost last night, they would have broken the record. They would have stood alone in terms of, having the longest losing streak in NHL history. And to be completely honest with you, I thought this losing streak should have been broken a few nights ago when they had a 3-0 lead over the Flyers and they blew it in the third period. I think that I didn't really watch much of the Sabres game, but overall, I feel like, if you have a 3-0 lead after 40 minutes, you must be doing something right. But I don't know. I'm happy for the Sabres, though. I feel for their fan base. I can't imagine what it's like to lose that many games in a row. I'd imagine it's going to be it'll be tough on any fan base. So I'm happy that they finally broke the streak.
Carter, you know what I noticed? I caught the end of the game yesterday. Okay. And this is what I noticed how the NHL has changed over the years. When a team is down 2, 3 goals, they pull their goalie with about 6 minutes left. In the past, it would always have to be within 2 minutes. And I hate the idea of pulling the goalie that early and taking that much of a chance. Does a team honestly think that they're going to pull their goalie and get 3 goals in a row, with an extra man advantage? I would think you have to play straight on and get at least within range. But it's just too far out, about 6 minutes, to me, to pull a goalie.
Right. It's definitely aggressive to pull your goalie with that much time left remaining in the game. And if you're doing it in a regular season game, it doesn't really make much sense because at least you'll have another chance to redeem yourself. If you're
do it all the time, it seems.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen teams pull their goalie from 2 down. 3 down in a regular season game is a bit aggressive unless you really, really have to get those points out. This started a couple of years ago when Patrick Waugh, the former head coach of the Colorado Avalanche, started pulling his goalie with a lot of time remaining. And I think a lot of coaches have really caught on to that. And, seeing that they can get an extra attacker on for such a long period of time, especially now since they've added the rule that if you ice the puck at the end of the game, you can't change your players. You can't call a timeout. You can't do anything, right? So, I think a lot of teams will take advantage of the fact that you can pull your goaltender. You can catch teams tired sometimes. And, it's not always going to be the prettiest shot that beats a goaltender. And, at the end of the day, I mean, you really just got to get see, here's the thing. I don't get the point of pulling your goaltender down 3. I think if you pull down 2, that's one thing. But I would only personally, if I was a head coach, I wouldn't pull my goaltender down 3 unless I'm in like Game 7 of a playoff series and I'm trying to rally my team to come back and win the game.
So, Carter, what exactly is the rule of when you can pull the goalie?
So there's really no rule when you can pull your goalie. You kind of just judge based on, if your team has the puck, if you're able to get it deep past their defender and you're able to go kind of chip and chase for it, right? There's really no rule for it. It's more at the coach's discretion. But I've seen a lot that, teams will opt to kind of wait until there's a whistle and then be able to pull their goaltender because then you can kind of, get a small break for your players, get them, let them get their thoughts together a little bit and just get ready for the opening faceoff.
So, in other words, if a coach wanted to, in the first period, he could just pull his goalie and just play extra man on offense the whole game if he wanted to. That's what you're saying.
Hypothetically speaking, yes, you could do that. I don't think it's a good idea, but if a coach wanted to try that, I don't think the rule book would say anything against it. That's for sure.
Oh, that's crazy. I'm surprised no one has tried that yet. I would try. I'd give it a shot during the regular season. What the hell? Let's see what happens, right?
I mean, if you're at the bottom of the standings, you got nothing to lose. So
just leave them. Can you imagine not playing with a goalie for the whole game, just an extra skate? I mean, you wind up losing like 18-7 or something.
You might give up like a historically bad amount of goals,
18,
but you might do something.
Wow.
Nah, that's just crazy. Wow. So, any news in the Islander camp, Carter, about possible movement, bringing people up, drafted? You got the trade deadline coming up here soon. Any rumors out there about any teams, but especially the Islanders who you cover?
Well, if we're narrowing in on the Islanders in particular, Mac, I think the big thing is that Lou Lamoriello has already made it clear that he wants to add a top 6 forward at the deadline, right? Obviously everybody sees that the captain Anders Lee, he's out for the rest of the season with an ACL injury. And everybody who watches the Islanders, who pays attention to how the Islanders play, knows how important he is, not just on the ice, but off the ice as well. And I think that Lou Lamoriello wants to find a forward that not only can fit the way that the Islanders are going to play, but they're going to fit the chemistry that the Islanders have as well. It's so important nowadays to have chemistry in professional sports, and I think the Islanders are a perfect example of that. They might not be the best team on paper, but the Islanders win games because not only of their defensive structure, but they play for each other, right? The Islanders have each other's backs. Barry Trotz has this next man up mentality that he's notorious for, and this has been a core teaching point of the Islanders ever since he's gotten to the island. If we're talking about potential trade candidates, I haven't really heard much, although I do think that the Islanders' first-round pick is in play as of right now, so it'll be interesting to see what comes out of that. I think they'll go after a guy like Kyle Palmieri from the New Jersey Devils. I think that Lou Lamoriello has a lot of history with the Devils. He might not have brought Palmieri into New Jersey, but he does like to make trades with teams that he used to be a part of. If you're looking at last deadline, he brought in Andy Green for a second-round pick last year. I do think that Palmieri is the best option right now for the Islanders, but Lou Lamoriello has already come out and said, if we can improve our team, we will. I think Palmieri is the best option. He's also the most reasonable option out there, but I think it's just more of a wait-and-see kind of game at this point.
Lou Lamoriello has been known to play musical chairs with coaches. I mean, he'll let go of a coach who could have even conceivably won the Stanley Cup the year before, and he could be gone mid-season the following year. Is Barry Trotz his first coach maybe ever who's very secure, who Lou Lamoriello wouldn't even consider moving on from?
100%, I think he is. I think that the way that Barry Trotz coaches, the defensive style that he's implemented on the Islander players, I think that's the reason that they're so good right now. That's the reason that they're able to win these tight-scoring games. And I just think that letting go of Trotz would just be a really, really bad move. So,
well, Carter, I want to thank you for coming in on your weekly visit with us. We got Iceman John Scully waiting backstage, and we're going to bring him on with his boxing update. But I'll tell you, I've learned more about hockey this year than I have in my previous years watching any hockey, and it's a pleasure having you on there.
And just one very quick thing for Carter. Is it going to happen or ain't going to happen? By the time you come on next week, will the Sabres have won another game?
To be determined. We'll think about that, and I'll get back to you on it.
Carter, great.
What's going to happen, Carter?
Great answer, Carter. That's why I love having you on this show. You have a great weekend, Carter, and we'll see. You have a great weekend, Carter, and we'll see you next week, my friend.
Thanks, guys. You too.
So there you go, Carter Benavinga with his hockey update. Backstage right now, we got Iceman John Scully, and he'll be bringing us some boxing news. And I got something I want to talk to the Iceman about.
Yeah.
Iceman, of course, is a former multi-Golden Glove champion. I mean, he's been a contender both in middleweight, light heavyweight. He's been a writer, an analyst, and now he's a trainer and has trained champions in the past. So let's bring the Iceman up. How you doing today, John?
All good. How you guys doing?
Hey, John. Good to see you.
Hey. All right.
John, and I kind of want to get into this with you. I don't know if you're familiar with this article that was in Boxing 24. The writer was Oliver Fennell. And there's this guy that has a boxing union / the martial arts fighting. His name, and I want to get his name right, so let me bring it closer to me. His name is Charles Russo. He's supposedly involved in a lot of different promoters, a lot of different things. And
he's a scumbag.
Thank you. Thank you.
You got to watch the language, John.
That's fine.
Before the show, you'll know a lot more about him than I will. I'm not familiar with this particular.
I mean, this guy was. I mean, Oliver Fennell kind of wrote a good article on him. Now he's kind of ticked off when he finally investigated it because the former middleweight champion that got hurt really bad. I think it's McClellan. Am I saying it right?
Joe McClellan.
McClellan. His sister reached out to this writer and said, wait a minute. This guy made a lot of promises to us and basically did nothing. She went down to Chicago to meet him. He left her hanging. And this guy is like taking money from these people in the union, and he's promoting supposedly these events that aren't coming through, and he's taking money from people for these events. I guess he's a multi-millionaire real estate guy. But I was shocked that Boxing 24 wrote this, first commended him, and like I said, now they've kind of retracted it and said he should be out of the fight game, period. And I knew you helping former boxers down in the Luck, I knew you probably know the guy and have an opinion.
Right. Well, he was trying to do a show, or he is trying to do a show, in I think the Bahamas or somewhere, like right now. And he's telling everyone that Mia St. John is going to be the main event. And, she's like, she shouldn't be fighting anywhere. Like, she's in her 50s. She had like 70 fights or whatever. But I've been hearing about him for quite a while, and Lisa has been one of the ones who's been telling me about him. All kinds of promises, and hasn't done anything whatsoever. It's just apparently just a complete scam from top to bottom. And when he contacts people, originally, including myself, like a few years ago, he contacted me about something, and it sounds really great. Like, it's like he's gonna do a show on a ship, like a cruise ship, and but it's just, his reputation is certainly gonna prevent that from happening, I would think, from now on.
What do you think causes somebody? I mean, I understand people. I mean, listen, he's got plenty of money. I mean, he's got being a real estate agent. I think he owns like properties for Walmart and all this other stuff. What do you think a guy like that? What is he trying to prove, John? I mean, why would you? And listen, I know they're just bad people out there, but why would you want to go public with this and promote this stuff and take advantage of people that are really bad shape? I just don't understand it.
Listen, read the paper. There's millions of these people in the world doing a lot worse than what he's doing with no conscience whatsoever. I've had people call. We had somebody a few years ago. My wife was trying to get some kind of refinancing or something, and some guy, she called them, and their number is on the internet, and it looked like a reputable thing, and she called them, and they ended up taking thousands of dollars and did nothing. And it turned out it was a post office box in Illinois or something, and the money was being funneled back to like Iraq or Saudi Arabia or something. We did an investigation. There's just a lot of people just want to make money. They want to, that's what they do. There's no rhyme or reason for the mentality of people. But yeah, I've been hearing about this guy for a while, and I think he must know that I know, because I sent him a message not that long ago trying to touch base with him, and he wouldn't respond to me. So I think he knew that probably Lisa had touched base with me already.
Could you tell the folks a little bit about what you do, which is awesome for ex-fighters that have come on to hard times? You do little auctions and stuff like that, John. Let the people know a little bit about that, so they know what's going on with you and that cause that you run.
Well, basically, what happened was a few years ago, I was looking at my phone one day, and I was like, man, I thought it was kind of cool. I was like, man, I have a lot of world champion fighters in my phone. Like, I know a lot of guys, man, and I thought it was kind of cool. And so one of the fighters, I forget if maybe it was Gerald or Wilfred. They needed, it was Wilfred, and Wilfred his family ran into some issues. He needed something, I don't know, a generator or something. So I said, all right, let me see what I can do. And I had a magazine that had somebody on the cover. It might have been Roy Jones, whoever it was. I said, man, I could probably get this guy to sign this and sell it and raise some money, and I could give it to Wilfred. So I did that, and it was easy. People love that kind of stuff. So I started reaching out to guys, in my phone, and so every time I would see Mark Breland, Junior Jones, Iron Barkley, Lamont Brewster, whoever, I would have them sign something, and then I would turn around and sell it, and then send the money to Wilfred or Gerald or Pritchard Cologne. And so it just kind of snowballed from there. Now I have people contacting me on Facebook asking for my address because they mail me stuff. They mail me memorabilia. They go, oh man, I got this. Jake LaMotta signed it. I'll give it to you, and you can sell it and give the money to Benitez. So it just kind of snowballed from there, and that's what I have going on right now.
Awesome, John. That's awesome. There's a news that Bob Arum, of course, he runs, Top Rank, is going to make a major announcement finally about Crawford his next fight and where it's going to be at. It's unofficial right now. Word is it'll either be Virgil Ortiz, maybe Sean Porter, or even Pacquiao. John, what do you think? I mean, you're in the Top Rank stable there a little bit. Your fighter and your team. What do you think? What are you hearing anyway? Do you hear anything about? Is it these three fighters that they're looking at?
I've heard basically the same stuff you have. I haven't. I don't have a deep interest. I'm the type like. I don't even read the articles anymore. Like when I see a headline that says, so-and-so might fight so-and-so, I go, listen, when the headline says the fight is set, I'll read the article. Because otherwise, I don't really care. It's just preliminary stuff. It's just publicity. It's just, angling. I'm tired of reading about, like, I guess the Pacquiao-Mayweather fight really ruined it for me because for years they talked about all the nonsense, oh, well, the money and, oh, well, we got to do this and we might do that. And I said, you know what? Just let me know when the fight happens. So I don't even read the articles anymore. I don't know.
The attitudes, that's what disappoints me. Not that many fighters have a great attitude. They'll fight whoever. I mean, I really love Lennox Lewis's attitude. When it was him and Riddick Bowe, clearly the two best heavyweights in the world, Lewis wanted to fight Riddick Bowe so badly, he'd take nearly any amount of money. Fine, I'll take the short end of the purse, okay? If it has to be 70-30 in your favor, I'll do it just to knock you out, establish myself, and get you out of the way. Now you have Crawford and Errol Spence, okay? Errol Spence is wimping out. He says, oh, it's got to be 70-30 split in my favor. Then he goes up to 75-25, which is ridiculous. In other words, rather than want to prove himself to be better than Crawford, he's looking for excuses not to fight him. Now Crawford disappoints me. Virgil Ortiz is actually calling Crawford out. So you would think Crawford would say, that's great. That's a mega fight for me. Ortiz is maybe the hottest prospect in boxing. I want that fight. Instead, Crawford says, I don't think it's that good a fight. I don't think he's not ready. He's making excuses to avoid the fight for whatever reason. The attitudes, I just don't like the attitudes. Very few guys want to fight so badly that they're willing to settle and do whatever it takes.
Right. And what's funny to me is when a guy actually says, and I think they sound good, but when they say something like, well, this guy's not ready for me. Well, then fight him, knock him out, beat him easy, get the free money. So when you say, I'm not going to fight him because he's not ready, that means you think he's ready. And you think he's
about Ortiz. He's not ready.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Then that I would want to fight him. It gives him the best chance of beating him and getting him out of the way. I want to destroy him if he's not ready. I don't want to wait for him to get ready when he could actually have a chance to beat me. It makes no sense.
We're not, as fighters, we're not sympathetic. We're not like, oh, we don't want to hurt this guy. Let's leave that money on the table and let somebody else have it. Come on, that's a lot of guys say stuff and I don't think they think it out. They don't really plan it out how it's going to come out to the people, but that's how it comes out.
Yeah, I agree. I know Gilbert Ramirez with Golden Boy Promotions, super middleweight. He says he's on the hunt. He wants better beaver Bivol, depending on what Bivol does here. But he says he definitely wants a shot at one of you guys. 41-0, 27 knockouts. A real good fighter, John.
Yeah, but Arthur's Arthur. it's good when guys say, I appreciate guys saying that, not having that fear and, wanting to step up. But just I always say with Arthur, being in the ring with him is not the same as watching him.
Why do you keep talking about Benavidez? Benavidez lost his title at the scales because he couldn't make weight. And then he said, well, maybe I have to train a little harder, be a little more dedicated. All these guys are name calling. I mean,
it's Jack. It's not Benavidez. It's Ramirez.
Oh, Ramirez.
Yeah.
So we got.
So anyway, he was quite a fighter. I mean, he was a champion for a while. So that would be interesting to me. So Iceman, we've been talking about training and stuff like that, and we talked a little bit last time you were on how you would attack Better Beeve if you were, the one who went up against him with angles and stuff offensively, trying to keep him off balance, not setting himself. So defensively, I've watched you fight, as I said, Iceman, and you were a good counter puncher. It seemed like fighters got to know when to grab, when to cover up, when not to cover up, and when not to grab. And counter punching is a real good skill that not a lot of people are really good at. I mean, I can think of a couple. I can think of Marlon Starlin pops in my head right away. A great counter puncher. So when you're in the ring or you're training a fighter, Iceman, how to be defensive? Do you actually have a drill or some kind of training you do to teach them how to cover up right, how to grab, when to grab, so they don't walk into a big punch?
Right. Yeah, we work on all that. I'll tell you what I do. I'm big on video, and I've showed it to Arthur and different guys. I'll show guys the great counter punchers and the great instances of counter punching, and to illustrate how to do it and when to do it. A great example is and it's funny because he's a very good friend of mine, but Milton McCrory, when he fought Donald Curry, the counter punch that Donald Curry caught Milton with, to me, is the greatest counter punch that I've ever seen, ever. Right, and funny, the second greatest is probably the one that Mike McCallum hit Donald Curry with. So Donald Curry lived and died by it. But I show guys those videos, and we slow it down in slow motion, and I lead up to it for the 30 seconds before and show them how it was set up. And like a lot of times people see a punch land and they go, oh, the guy landed a great punch, he threw a good punch. And I'm saying, yeah, but you got to realize, like, he might have been planning that out for the last 5 minutes. Like he saw something and he was setting it up. And I think Curry was a very good example of that. You could actually see his brain working and see the little movements he was doing, planning these punches. And so I'm kind of big on that, taking a guy's, his biggest punch and trying to find a way to time him and counter him.
And how about with the grabbing and when to cover up? Like I said, Iceman, you can go to grab somebody, they'll catch you with a shot if you don't do it right. So I mean, to get that rest or to get him off you, to get a break from the guy, is there a certain way to come in to grab a guy without getting a punch landed on your chin?
Yeah, I mean, it's just something you see in the heat of the moment. It's literally it's like, a round is like running water. It's just constantly changing, constantly. So you have to literally see it in the the spur of the moment, on a quick second, how to grab and everything like that. But fighters can do things like that very naturally. It's kind of like almost like a sixth sense. It's hard. I say it's hard to tell that, okay, you got to wait till this happens before you can grab. It's like, you'll know. A fighter will know, he'll sense it. He'll know at the right moment when he's vulnerable.
So on the counter punch itself, is that because you see a pattern on how the guy's throwing his shots? For instance, like suppose he's doing a combination that works to your body or head, it comes back with a couple jabs in the right. I mean, do you see that happening during a fight, and that's how you time your counter punch? You're timing what he's doing and how he's doing it?
Right, 100%. Like I'll give an example. Probably, especially since when I first started boxing, my best technique was I would be able to slip a jab and throw the right hand over it, like Muhammad Ali used to do, where he would lean back, he would lean away from it. Now you can't do that with everybody. You couldn't do that with Larry Holmes. You know, Larry Holmes' jab was too fast, it was too strong. But with most guys, Ali was able to get away with that, you know, and catch them very, very easily. So, you know, what works on one guy is not going to work on another necessarily. You have to, if you have a guy with a slow jab, you know, he throws a slow jab, he always drops his right hand. That's why we watch the tapes for weeks and weeks before the fight, because if a guy jabs and drops his right hand, he's probably doing that all the time. Like, it's not,
he'll
literally do it all the time.
Is any such thing as a slow jab? I remember when Howard Cosell was doing the commentary for the 1984 Olympics, he kept using the term the speed jab. I mean, a jab's a jab. I mean, some guys are a little quicker with the jab and not, but I can't imagine a jab being slow.
That's because you're not a professional fighter.
Well, I've watched enough. I've watched enough.
Oh, you watched it. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. Well, I have news for you. Being in a ring and watching on TV is two different things. Yeah. Trust me. Take my word for it.
But a guy throwing out a jab, I understand you could counter some guys a little better than others, depending on the speed factor. But the whole concept of the jab is to get it out there as quick as you can, because it's with your lead hand.
So, well, let me tell you something. I know guys who have slow jabs. I mean, like, trust me, there's guys with slow jabs. They're just not fast with it. You know, Roy Jones, when he jabbed, had a very fast jab. Tommy Hearns, you can't counter Tommy Hearns' jab. But you watch Ali, like Ron Lyle was slow. Ron Lyle, Ali countered his jab, his slow jab, ridiculously easy, like embarrassingly easily. So yeah, no, without a doubt, some guys, especially compared to each other, some guys' jabs are slow, and that's even to this day. When I spar people, I'm never a guy like to come out throwing punches right away. You know, people want to see excitement. I take my time, and what I'm always looking for is the slowness or the speed of the jab. And if a guy has a slow jab, I actually am like, okay.
Well, some guys aren't committing to it. I'll agree. They throw it out half-heartedly. It's kind of like
they're slow. They're slow. We're
like
talking about
Ron Lyle, for example. He wasn't really a jab. If he throw it out, it would seem half-heartedly.
It was slow. I mean, come on, what are you talking about?
No, well, some guys really commit to it.
They're slow. You can call it whatever you want. When we're in there and we see it coming, we're saying, is it fast or is it slow? That's our deduction.
Well, Iceman, isn't there like a different jab? I mean, you got a snap jab that people kind of throw out there and snap it back. Well, others are more of a straight jabber, right? Am I wrong when I see that?
Yeah, there's different kind of jabs, but I mean, trust me. I mean, like, I've boxed 1,000 people in my life. I can tell you who's really fast. Look, Eric Harding had a powerful, fast jab. Eric Harding had a fast jab. You couldn't just throw a hook over it and counter them. I boxed other guys. You could counter them ridiculously easy because their jab was slow. Like, not everybody has the ability to throw a fast jab. It's just the way it is.
It's interesting you mentioned a name a lot of people might not be familiar with, Eric Harding, who I knew from Philadelphia. And before he fought Roy Jones, I thought he was in with a genuine chance at springing an upset if Jones was on form. And Harding really boxed very well for a while in that fight. And then he hurt his shoulder and had to get pulled out. But that's a good name out of the past.
Let me tell you something about Eric Harding. I always say he's one of the best guys I've ever been in the ring with who wasn't a world
Yeah.
champion. And
Yeah.
and I'll tell you what, I always talk about the dressing room before a fight and how guys are nervous and everything. He's one guy, nothing fazed this guy. And when he fought Roy Jones, I went down to the fight, and it was in Biloxi. I went down to the fight, so I don't want to bother him. It's the day before the fight, so I give him a call and I say, hey, Eric, man, just I'm here. Good luck. He goes, oh man, come on up to the room. So I said, I don't want to bother you. He goes, no, come on up. So I go up. This guy acted like we were getting ready to go out to the nightclub. Like he was so relaxed. And I'm like, and I'm just like, man, he's fighting Roy Jones tomorrow. Does he know he's fighting Roy Jones tomorrow? And he's laughing, and it was weird. I'm like, this guy has no fear at all. And
Well, his
I've seen him
background,
other times.
John, you're
Yeah.
probably familiar with his background from Philly, running around
Oh.
with the gangs, and he
Listen.
was fortunate to be alive at that point.
Listen, I'm gonna tell you, he's life. You ever see the movie The Butterfly Effect? Have you ever seen that movie? Okay, the movie, basically the butterfly effect is if you leave your house right now and you go to the stoplight, whether you decide to take a left or a right is going to change somebody's life going forward. If you go to the left and you stop a car from taking another right, he's not going to have an accident in 5 minutes because he's going to be 3 seconds behind, that type of thing. I was getting ready to fight Michael Nunn, and we needed sparring for the fight. We had nobody who could emulate Michael Nunn. I go to Foxwoods. A guy from my gym was fighting a 4 or 6 round fight on the undercard. The guy he fights, Eric Harding, who I had never heard of in my life. And I'm like, man, this guy's just like Michael Nunn. Like, this is perfect sparring for Michael Nunn. Turns out I knew Eric's trainer. Went over to him after. I said, hey, man, could we use Eric for sparring? This guy's perfect. We set it up. Eric came to camp with me. Was great sparring. Like, he was great sparring. And so he liked us. He liked the way we trained. Everything was great. A few months later, he realizes in Philly, he's going through a lot. He's in some bad situations with some bad people. He's out there in the streets. I mean, street gunfights, the whole nine. So his trainer called us and said, listen, I can't do anything with him. Like, he's going to get killed if he stays in Philadelphia, and go to prison. Like, forget about boxing. Can he come to Hartford and live with you guys? We get him a manager. He moves to Hartford. That changed his life. That's why he got the fight with Tarver and Montel Griffin and Roy Jones. If I don't fight
Tarver, let's add
Oh,
that.
right. He beat him good. But here's the thing. It's so crazy. If I didn't fight Michael Nunn, you never would have heard of Eric Harding. He would have been probably in jail in Philadelphia, or he would have kept fighting 6 rounders and wouldn't got connected or whatever. So it's just, boxing's a crazy game. Life is crazy. And that's a perfect example of it.
Yeah, John.
Good stuff,
Excellent,
John.
excellent stuff, John. I want to thank you again for coming in, Iceman. We appreciate you coming in. You're normally here every Thursday with us. Sometimes you got, of course, business to take care of, but we appreciate having your view as a fighter, a trainer. I mean, broadcast, you bring it all to the table. And again, Iceman, thank you for stopping.
And we're not done with our Sugar Ray Robinson debate.
He was dropping like a fly, man. It was like bowling pins. He just kept dropping. All right.
Have a great day, my friend.
Yeah.
All right.
So there you go, Jack. Iceman John
I
Scully.
can't argue with a guy who's been in the ring and done all he has. I mean, compared to me.
Well,
So
I'll
he's
tell
kind
you.
of putting me in my place. I'm kind of rope-a-doping him.
You're covering up, right, Jack?
I'm
You're covering.
rope-a-doping him.
Yeah, I hear you. I mean,
now,
hey,
I'm
listen,
hanging on.
there's different perspectives, Jack, on everything. Now, sometimes it's not right or wrong.
John.
So sometimes not right or wrong, just different, Jack. So
He's smart. I got to give him that.
So, folks, we'll be right back after this. We got a light welterweight champion, 2-time, Paulie. Say it for me, Malignaggi. I'll get that G right on there before he comes on. So Paul Malignaggi will be on in the 9 o'clock hour, scheduled to be here. So stick around, guys. We got a lot more stuff coming for you right after these messages.
If you served honorably in our nation's armed forces and you're looking for a way to continue serving your fellow veterans in your community, then join AMVETS. Each year, AMVETS members volunteer millions of hours at VA healthcare facilities from coast to coast, helping to improve the lives of their fellow veterans through the VA Voluntary Services Program. AMVETS posts and departments also participate in a wide variety of community service projects, ranging from Americanism in our schools to supporting the Special Olympics and Boy Scouts of America. If you no longer wear the uniform today, you can still serve the AMVETS by joining today at amvets.org.
Hi, Grandma. What's for dinner?
Hey, honey, I'm making stew tonight.
Ooh, can Nina come over?
I'm not sure about our new friend. I wonder if there's been any drinking going on. Alcohol at her age can lead to so many bad things. I've been meaning to ask you, what would happen if someone offered you a drink?
Grandma?
This is hard. She's so young, but I know I need to talk to her about it now before someone tries to give her alcohol. If anyone ever does offer you a drink, I want you to say no. I have too much respect for my family, and I don't want to get in trouble.
Okay.
Really?
I promise, Grandma. I love you too.
Okay, how about tasting the stew and telling me what you think?
Some children may try alcohol as young as 9 years old. It's not too early to talk about drinking. For tips on how to begin the conversation, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. That's underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. This message brought to you by SAMHSA and this station.
When you hear the word asthma, you probably think of shortness of breath, coughing, or inhalers. Lots of things can trigger asthma, but the fact is that asthma doesn't just attack, it can kill. But with proper medical management, asthma is controllable. If you experience shortness of breath, wheezing, tightness in your chest, or persistent nighttime coughing, you may have asthma. See your doctor and get the facts. You'll breathe easier. For more information, call 211 Info Line. A message from the Connecticut Department of Public Health, keeping Connecticut healthy.
If you talk and they will hear you every single time.
Oh, we're getting killed.
Yeah, well, Kyle's not here.
How come?
Kicked off the team. Didn't Tim tell you? Kyle and some other kids got caught drinking beer in the park a couple of nights ago.
Really?
Yeah. Zero tolerance. He's out for the season.
Come on, it's a first offense, right?
That we know of. But why should that matter? He knew not to drink. I made it clear to Matt, that's what we expect from him. What have you said to Tim?
Nothing really. You know, a lot of kids try it at this age, so.
Yeah, well, a lot of kids don't try it too. I'm not saying that Matt's going to be this perfect kid, but if I don't tell him what we expect and why he shouldn't drink, how's he going to know?
You think kids that age really listen?
They never admit it, Bill, but they hear more than you think.
Talk. They hear you. For more information about talking to kids about underage drinking, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to the Mac and Jack Sports Show on live, Wednesday through Sunday, 8 to 10 a.m. And we got quite a show for you today, folks. Just had Iceman John Scully on. We had Carter B with his hockey review, and we got a special guest coming up. He's backstage already, Jack. He's one of a two-time light welterweight champion, a broadcaster, Paul Melanagi. I think I got it almost right.
Yeah, you got it 90% correct.
Yes. And I know Paul come up here and straighten me out. So we want to bring Paul up and introduce him to our viewers and our listeners out there. And let's see if we can do that right now. How you doing, Paul?
I'm good, guys. Good
You
to
like
be
to
on.
be called Paul or Paulie? I call you Paulie still. Which one?
Doesn't matter. Because Paulie's fine too. Don't worry about it, Jack. I never grow out of Paulie.
Excellent. So Paulie, I want to start off. I want to bring you back to the beginning when you first decided that you wanted to become a boxer. And I always find this interesting with guests because we get different reasons. I want to see what made you want to go out in the ring and become a professional boxer.
I guess it was circumstantial. You know, I I got kicked out of high school when I was a teenager. Started boxing. My family took me to a gym. I got pretty good, you know. One thing led to another. The circumstances led one thing to another. As I was getting pretty good, certain influences in the boxing world. Prince Nassim Hamed. I liked Arturo Gotti. I liked guys like Floyd Mayweather, Pernell Whitaker. Started just looking at guys and feeling like I wanted to do that too. I was getting better and better, and improving, and it just kind of led me to it. Before you know it, you're a pretty good amateur, and you got guys wanting to sign you to turn pro and whatnot, and you kind of realize, okay, I guess this is what I can do.
I mean this in the most complimentary of ways, Paulie. You were a tremendous overachiever with the things you had to overcome. It's largely forgotten. You had bad hands, and it looked like your career wasn't going to take off. And I remember your debut, if I'm not mistaken, was at Keyspan Park, the home of the Brooklyn Cyclones, and you stopped your opponent in that fight. And you seemed to be punching really well with a lot of authority in that fight. And then you had the hand difficulties, and that definitely affected, how hard you'd punch going forward. So a lot of times it seemed you had to win in a plan, not just a plan A, but had to go to a plan B and be a lot more conservative in the ring than you would have liked to have been.
Yeah, I always had a lot of hand speed, and I thought that I could be the kind of fighter that could overwhelm me with speed. But as I started having hand problems, I started to realize that I had to sort of be on a budget and be more picky with my shots. And, not just throw the speed just for the sake of throwing speed, So I had to make sure that I, didn't over budget myself on how many punches I threw in every fight, because at a certain point, even if I didn't have a bad injury, my hands would start hurting at a certain point in the fight, So I kind of learned to do that a little bit better with each fight. I just gained up some experience, especially as the fights got longer and I started to have to fight more rounds. But I started to hurt my hands pretty early in my career. I remember I had I ripped tendons in my knuckles, probably my second or third pro fight, and so I didn't have surgery after that for like a year. So I mean, I wasn't going to tell you I would have probably had knockouts like Mike Tyson, but I think I would have had a lot more knockouts had I not had so many hand injuries, and it probably would have, who knows, changed the momentum of some fights too. You never know, but all's well that ends well, like they say.
Well, you have to be thinking, like you mentioned, change of momentum. People kind of look at the victories of fighters, but they don't look at losses and circumstances. And one of your better fights was one you didn't win against Miguel Cotto. I don't know how you look back on that fight at Madison Square Garden, because Madison Square Garden was Cotto's house in large part, okay? Even though you're the local guy, the Brooklyn guy. Cotto was a little more the home fighter for whatever reason, at the Garden. And you won a few rounds in that fight. And a couple of more rounds just went your way. Do you ever think the way your career or legacy would have been altered? That was a terrific fight, because you fought Cotto during the prime of his career, and Cotto was a great, great fighter.
Yeah, it would maybe just a few more rounds, and I turned the fight in my favor. I think I won 4 and 5 rounds on card. But I look back on it. Cotto is the most complete fighter I ever fought. Stylistically, I matched him well against him because he wasn't the fastest guy, so my speed could offset some of his advantages. But overall, as a complete fighter, he's probably the most complete fighter I've fought, the best fighter that I fought in a lot of ways. So I look back on that fight. It was a painful night because he was the hardest puncher I've ever fought as well. But we were both at a certain point in our careers where we were still fighting for not just the money, but also the legacy and our name and reputation in the sport. We're fresh in the sport. Yeah, he's a world champion already. Probably, I think he made 4 or 5 Betances, but he was my age, So we were both fighting for something more than just money at that time. And I feel like you have to fight for something more than money. At a certain point, yes, you're thinking more about the money than anything else. You get older, you have families, you do whatever, but at that point in your career, legacy is everything, and
you were unbeaten going into the fight, and you were considered a bit of a pretty boy who would fold over.
Yeah.
God, you injured your jaw in that fight, and that had to be a torturesome fight, going
Yeah.
in 12 rounds.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
handicap.
It was a bad injury I had in the fight. And it wasn't my jaw, but it was my orbital bone. That
Orbital bone.
swelling the right side of my face. I mean, Miguel was a natural left-hander who fought right-handed, so his left hook was very, very powerful. And it showed in the fight. A lot of the fighters that he was fighting at that time, if you'd see, the right side of their face was always really much more damaged because of that hook, and I was no different. I had broken the orbital bone. But you say about Cotto's house. It was Cotto's house every year at that time, and because he would fight specifically on the weekend of the Puerto Rican Day Parade. So you had Puerto Ricans from both New York in the house, and also Puerto Ricans from Puerto Rico in the house as well. But you know what? The fans, as hard as they are on you, Puerto Rican fans also gave me a lot of credit after the fight. Yeah, sure, you still get a lot of guys that are hard on you, but it was I got a lot of praise after that fight. It was a good fight. Had I not been swallowing so much blood because the orbital bone deals with your sinus here, and so the blood drains into your sinus, and you're swallowing a lot of it. And I think it wore me out late in the fight. Had I not been worn out late in the fight, I think we would have still had a lot more to fight for in the late rounds, and who knows, But it's a fight that probably changed the momentum of my career in a way where people would take me more seriously. I was a good fighter. I knew I was a good fighter, but I think people started to accept that after that fight.
Paulie, it blows my mind that here you are fighting. You got hands that aren't that great. I mean, we had John Scully on about training. He trained a lot of champions, and the training with that, Paul. When you're training for a fight, you got this problem. I mean, what adjustments do you make when you're actually like sparring or you're getting in there and you're going through your drills? I mean, you got to take precautions, this just seems like it's awesome that you were able to get in there and become champion, and already we're at a deficit. So your training, Paulie, what was that like?
You hear various things. You hear like people like, oh, you got to toughen up your hands. You hear like these guys from other sports, you gotta hit walls barehanded and toughen up your hands. And I'm like, and they calluses your knuckles, and I'm like, I think that works. I don't know, man. And my hands would be hurting, and then like it would affect my training because if my hands are hurting, I can't train the way I want to, So then I started doing the opposite. Some people were like, oh, you gotta baby your hands, you gotta treat your hands like babies, and you gotta rub them down every night, and then when you wrap them, you gotta double wrap them in the gym. You only get a certain amount of gloves for the fight that you're allowed to use, but for the fight, you gotta double wrap them and put a sponge. So I did all kinds of things, man. I mean, just nothing worked. I did all kinds of things, nothing worked. But I had a doctor, Stephen Marbles, who was from Boston, and he fused up my hand in a way where at least it diminished the problems, because the problem was so chronic early on that I thought I wasn't going to be able to have a career, And after the fusion of Dr. Marbles' hand fusion surgery in about 2004 or 5. I had less problems. I broke my hand again in 2008. I broke my hand in the bare knuckle fight last year. Sure, I'm always gonna have some problems, but I was able to at least have a career because of Dr. Marble. So I owe that doctor a lot.
Hey, Paulie, are you retired now? No bare knuckle fights anymore, please. I mean,
no more. I did it once. I didn't think it was that difficult. It was just hard on my hands, I didn't find it very difficult to do. Even having to fight most of the fight one-handed because I broke my hand, I didn't find it very difficult. But I think there's a you have to tilt the scale, so to speak. What's worthwhile and what's not at a certain point. And I think right now I don't think it's worthwhile. To do it. I've thought about it. I even got offered, some decent fights in there, even for the world championship for bare knuckle. I got offered a fight, but I just don't. I don't. Right now, it's more no than yes. I don't feel like it's pulling me in that direction the way it needs to.
You've complained a lot, as we all have, about the judging in boxing. I mean, a couple of your fights at least, you were outraged over the scores, where you may have not complained about a decision going against you if it was a very close fight that you felt could have gone either way. But then you hear a lopsided score against you, it's really, outrageous. You're like in the first one, Diaz fight, and one of the scores, at least in the Adrian Broner fight, really struck you the wrong way.
Yeah, I think I never really had an A side. I never really was an A side in the sport. It's funny because when I was younger, everybody made because of the way I looked and the way I was, that I would have the advantages and be very promotable. And that's one of the BS stories you actually hear in sports. And I believed them. As a teenager, I believed them. I'm like, wow, am I lucky that I have certain characteristics that will really help me? I actually had more than I realized because I speak 3 languages, and nobody was mentioning that too. People were just looking at my skin color and saying, "Oh, you know what? You got the complexion for the connection. You're gonna make a lot of money. You can just win world championships." Well, I won 2 world championships and was still constantly marketed as a B-side fighter against other stars who were not of my skin color. So I couldn't really, can't really say that helped me. If anything, hurt me, but. I think that had I been able to be marketed a bit better the way I should have been as an A-side fighter and not had injuries the way I had, I think I would have accomplished a lot more. I think I would have had a better legacy. But nonetheless, like I said, all's well that ends well. I think if you're the A-side a little bit more often, maybe you're going to get those decisions that you got robbed in as well. When you're not coming in as the featured guy, you're more apt to be robbed in those kind of fights, and that's what's happening to me, Then as far as a lopsided judge scores in those fights, I don't know. I just think maybe they were just trying to get insult to injury.
Well, Paulie, we're gonna bring up a guest, kind of a guest co-host that was scheduled today. He's coming in later. He'll be talking about after you. But I want to bring Josh up. Maybe he's got some thoughts or anything about boxing and stuff like that. But I want to talk to you about your broadcasting too, Paul. I mean, you're an award-winning broadcaster in boxing. So you found another way to expand in your sport. So I mean, not only did you do something that a lot of fighters have never done, you won a world champion twice, and then you became an award-winning broadcaster. I mean, how did that make you feel when you won that?
I was actually surprised. I didn't know that I could do that. It was really nice to be recognized as somebody that was good at that. My goal was always to, be the best fighter I could be, and try to sustain myself in a life as an athlete, and hopefully make a lot of money, and then be able to live off the money and investments and turn that money into more money. And that was my goal, naively, as I was younger, and so I never thought of actually having a job after boxing. It's funny, I thought I would roll my money from boxing over into other things, So when the broadcasting stuff presented itself, it did pay well when I started, so that was good. But also, I didn't know that I had this ability. People would tell me, you're a great speaker, and you can, you'd really be good at broadcasting. Again, another check for the promotability of a fighter that I didn't realize I had. So I had that too, and it managed to get me into the broadcasting world, and it was fun. It was cool, It's I always tell people I'm a fan of the sport. So if I'm a fan of the sport, I always enjoy talking about it and comparing fighters and styles, and little effects of things that maybe not everybody will see. And so I've always like to have those conversations. And then when I was able to become a broadcaster, it kind of had the same feel. Like I'm watching the fights with the fellas, and we're just talking, and I just can't curse. That's it. So it was. It was, aside from that, it was basically the same kind of feeling. And in order not to ever, people used to ask me, "Oh, don't you get nervous?" I think because I had that mental approach to it, I was never nervous because I just felt like I was watching the fights with the fellas. I had a good team around me, and that was it. We just kind of just chatted about the fight we were watching, and everybody enjoyed it.
Can you see yourself on the exhibition tour 15, 20 years from now? You and Adrian Broner part 2?
No, I think me and Adrian, the ship sailed. I think it's not our fault. I think the promoters involved and everybody involved should have known better. That is one of the fights that probably should have had a second and third fight. We could have had a funny and classic trilogy. I think me and Adrian's style would have always blended and meshed together to make close, good fights. I think we were both two of the best trash talkers in the sport. And I think the first fight ended in controversial with that decision, controversial enough with that decision that he could easily have made a second fight. But most importantly, it was the highest rated Showtime Championship boxing event of 2013. So there was absolutely all the reasons to keep making a second and third fight there, and absolutely no reason to not make it. And they still did not make it. So I think the ship with me and Adrian's tail that was supposed to happen back then. There was also a world championship in the mix back then because we would have changed hands. So a second and third fight with me and Adrian would have also involved the championship of the world. It sailed. It didn't happen. Just mark that up as well as maybe I wasn't as everybody used to say I was. Right?
Well, Paulie, we talk about this a lot with a lot of boxing personalities, journalists, former boxers, and current boxers, even on the show. And I want to get your opinion. I think that you being in the business a little bit, that the promoters in boxing are kind of taking boxing and eating itself alive, if you will. I mean, you've got so many belts, so many different divisions. There's no cross-promotion fights anymore, making the best fights. They're keeping it within their stables. Everything's pay-per-view. And the popularity of boxing at one time was the biggest sport in the country. I know you got to go back a little bit, but it was the biggest sport in the country. And now it's not even in the top 4 anymore, which to me is ridiculous. I'm a huge boxing fan. And I think that maybe the promoters or an association, somebody's got to get together and start getting more competitive boxing on regular TV channels, and maybe whittle away some of these belts that really don't mean nothing anymore. What's your opinion, Paulie?
Yeah, I think it's such a complicated spider web that it's really hard to pinpoint one particular thing and say, well, if this changes, this will set the tone for boxing to be better. I think at this point, it's gotten itself into such a confusing state of affairs that it's hard to create new fans. It's hard for people to understand. Unless you are a fighter unless you are a fan or an analyst that really, really follows the sport hardcore, you will have a lot of trouble figuring out the champions in a lot of the weight classes where they are. Even if, you used to say, even with the multiple sanctioning bodies, you used to get, who's this guy's a world champion. What is he holding? Oh, he's the WBA world title. Okay, or WBC world title. And you knew, right? You knew what that meant. Now, just because somebody's got the WBA world title, you got to ask him if it's a super or the regular. You got to ask him if it's the interim. You got to even WBC title. Is he the franchise? You've got to. You don't. It doesn't even go without saying anymore. That guy's the man at the weight class. Well, back in the day, at least when I was coming up, it was like, okay, what's he holding? He's holding the BC world title. Okay, we already know. That enough said. He's a major world champion. BA, but before me, you had just the world championship, the championship of the world, and that's it. I don't think there was multiple sanctioning bodies, several decades before my time. But at least in those times, fighters fought more often. I don't mind the multiple world title sanctioning bodies as long as they don't start trying to multiply themselves within themselves, which is what they're doing now. I think that hurts the sport because that hurts the credibility of every fighter. If you water down the title, it's not worth that much anymore. So you got to stop watering down the titles, and it's hard to figure out which version of the title is the watered down version and which version is not. You even got fighters today walking around claiming they're world champions when they're actually not. They've got a watered down version of the world championship. So it starts with the fighters and promoters not accepting these things, but they always will because they feel like they can fool the public and sell every fight as a championship sport, a championship fight. So people get confused. And the non-hardcore fans definitely get confused. I mean, I got people saying all the time. I even heard even MMA guys saying, it's easy to become a champion in boxing. There's so many belts. Not really. The major version of the major world title is just as difficult as it ever was. But you can pick up any kind of secondary or watered-down title, sure. But does that really make you a champion? Not the way I see it.
Paulie, which fight does better business? Fury and Joshua for the undisputed world heavyweight championship, a Tyson Holyfield trilogy. Which does better business?
It's a shame that we have to even wonder, right? Because it should be a no-brainer which should do better business. I could tell you you could probably add a Jake Paul versus a very, very well-marketed opponent in that mix as well. And now you'd be comparing 3 fights, and you'd still would be risking that Fury and Joshua will do the worst of the 3, So it's a real shame when it comes to that, that boxing has not been marketed to the extent that it should have done for itself. But again, it's not like you don't have the platforms today. You have a lot of platforms today. It's just a matter of doing it right, and obviously doing well within the sport first, Nobody has as high of expectations as for the retired guys or for the YouTube guys, because there's no system there. There's no ranking system or whatever. It's just 2 really popular guys going at it, or 2 popular retired guys going at it who already built up their legend. But when you got 2 champions still building up their legend, still doing what they're doing, then you become you're an intricate part of the actual sport. You're not like a branched off version of it, like the YouTubers or the retired fighters. And when you become an intricate part of the sport, you need the sport to be sustaining itself well in order to have fans become interested in these kind of fights, And the sport has not done a great job of that, unfortunately.
Well said, Paulie. I agree with you 100%. I want to thank you for coming in, Paulie, and spending a little time with us. It was great having you on. Very, very great insight into boxing. I love that, we have a 2-time. I mean, a lot of people can say whatever they want about anything. I just had a 2-time light welterweight champion on the show, and an award-winning commentator. And Paulie, again, good luck to you. Hope everything works out for you. And it was a pleasure having you on.
Absolutely, guys. Thank you. My pleasure.
Thanks, Paulie.
Talk to you guys soon. Ciao.
Sure. So there you go. A light welterweight 2-time champion, and some years in between that championship too, Jack. I mean, it wasn't like 1 year here. It was like 7 years later, if I read right, 5 years later, that he became the IBO champion, if I'm correct.
Yeah, well, the IBO isn't a major sanctioning body, but he's won, major sanctioning body world titles.
So, I mean,
now we go on to some Met baseball. I mean,
yes.
All you like to do is talk Yankees.
That's
it's finally I got you to relent a little bit,
folks. That's not true, and that I follow the Mets since 1969. They're not my favorite team because my dad's from Brooklyn. I was brought up a Yankee fan, and of course, I am a diehard Yankee fan. But I've always followed the Mets since they were my grandfather's favorite team. So that's not totally true. But we do have a Mets analyst on with us, Josh Rubin.
Good morning, guys.
Good morning. I'm glad we got you to come in today and talk about the Mets because
same.
Yes, because the Mets.
What should we talk about? Is there anything anything newsworthy?
Yeah, I think there was a kind of a small signing that you guys made yesterday. As a matter of fact, I think it was at the deadline that was given
in the middle of the night.
Yes. And so you got a shortstop, a young, talented guy, 27 years old, multi-million-dollar contract for 10 years. First, Josh, did they overpay him?
So let's go over the details of this contract, because at face value, it may seem like it's the details of the contract are a little confusing. It may seem at face value that he's overpaid if you just look at 10 years, $341 million. But let's work backwards. That $341 million, that's not a coincidence, that number, right? Fernando Tatis Jr. signed a $340 million contract this offseason. So this was very specifically done to be $1 million more and make it the most lucrative contract for a shortstop in Major League history. So $341 million includes a $21 million signing bonus, plus $50 million of deferred payments starting in 2032. So really, what the Mets are going to be paying is $27 million on average a year, which I think is appropriate for a player of Francisco Lindor's talent in this market. Listen, $27 million, obviously, people say this is a disgusting amount of money for anyone in any profession to make. We have to throw it out the window. This is the market. This is what professional athletes make. Julius Randle on the Knicks makes $19 million a year, and he's like the 63rd highest paid NBA player. So the numbers are just going to keep going up as the TV deals and the CBAs keep changing over the years. This is just the state of sports. So I think it was great that they got it done right at the deadline, because Lindor's camp said, if we don't have it done by opening day, we're not negotiating during the season, and I will become a free agent at the end of this season. And that just would have been the first question asked at every post-game press conference after every single game, and it just would have been hanging over the team the whole season. So really happy that they got it done.
Tatis's contract, let's remember, is for 14 years, okay? $340 million, but
he's younger also.
He had 4 years left, Tatis, where he'd have to go to arbitration. He was under team control. Lindor's case was different because he had the 10 years, basically. He was going to be a free agent, free and clear.
He just went through arbitration, right? So he's making like $22.5 million this year, right? And they didn't want him to become a free agent.
And what I don't like about the contract is it takes him through age 37. What's going to be the last couple of years of the contract? He's a shortstop where mobility is going to be becoming a little more of an issue. Did they turn him into a first baseman later on?
Probably not a first baseman. I would think, if anything, an outfielder. But it's so tough to say, what sports medicine is going to look like in 10 years, what the longevity of these players' careers is going to look like in 10 years. Is he going to be productive ages 34 through 37, the last 3 to 4 years of the contract as the first 6 to 7 years? Probably not. It's impossible to say, but this is, the players want this security, and this is what it takes to lock them up. Would I have liked for it to have been an 8-year contract instead? Yeah. Am I happy it's not a 12-year contract? Also, yes.
But couldn't Steve Cohen have waited Lindor out, let him become a free agent, and Steve Cohen has deep pockets. He could have said, I'm going to outbid everyone later on if push comes to shove. And the Dodgers want to come in and sign Lindor.
Maybe
Corey Seager, becomes a free agent, and they could go in that.
You're playing a game of chicken that you don't want to play. What if Lindor has a terrible experience his first year as a Met and says, "This is not a place I want to be for the next 10 years," and then it doesn't matter how deep Cohen's pockets are. He just decides there's no way I'm re-signing with this team.
But such a chance. What happens if Lindor is a so-so player after 2 years? It's quite a commitment.
Of course, that's a risk you're taking with any type of long-term commitment. But Lindor's proven to be a top 10 player over the first 6 years of his career, and Mets fans deservedly should be excited, rightfully so, about this signing. But with it, they should have high expectations. Now Lindor's got to produce. Fans should expect 30 home runs. 85 RBIs, 100 runs scored, 20 steals, Gold Glove caliber shortstop. Probably batting average around 285.
But they're in the toughest division of all of baseball, and the most competitive. Put it that way.
I agree.
Well, let's get to another big signing that the Mets had, and of course, you guys needed a catcher. Your other catcher was getting a little old in the tooth, and they pick up maybe the first, at least the second best catcher in the league right now with Mccann. I mean, he has a little bit a better batting average than Realmuto had, just as much power. And you guys really needed to upgrade their catcher. I think this solves your catching problem for a while too, there, Josh.
I think that we should be cautiously optimistic about a guy like James Mccann. He's really only had a nice season and a half offensively. He was an all-star in 2019, and last year he only played 31 games in 2020. He did hit 7 homers in those 31 games, but he's not a particularly good defensive catcher if you look at sabermetrics. He did become a better pitch framer last year, which will help our pitching staff a little bit. But he parlayed a nice season and a half into a good contract. I'm expecting him to hit 250 to 270. I'd be happy with 15 homers and 60 RBIs. But we shouldn't be expecting that 30 home run clip that he exhibited last year in a small sample size. If he catches 120 games, I'll be very happy.
You expect more out of him than Wilson Ramos, because there was a lot of optimism when the Mets signed Wilson Ramos. and he just didn't quite work out.
Yeah, I mean, it happens, you know. The Mets do have a very nice catching prospect who's not slated to make major league debut for a couple of years in their minors, but you know, maybe Mccann can act as the bridge for the next couple of years.
Well, he got a 4-year contract, so I think they're looking for him to be more than just a stopover, Mccann. I think they're looking at him as a long-term option.
Long-term, I don't see it, to be perfectly honest. I just don't think the history is there of him producing with a long enough history.
So let's get to last year with the Mets. Their offensive batting average was number one in the league, right? They were up number one there. They were I think they're in the top 10 of home runs, but they couldn't score runs. They couldn't drive in the runs when people were in position. I mean, they left DeGrom out there losing games, 1-0, and
something he's used to.
Yes, and perhaps the best pitcher in the league, arguably anyway. And the ERA was one of the highest in the league, believe it or not, with one of the best pitchers. I mean, that combines, of course, the bullpen and everything together. So, what do you think the Mets first with run producing? Josh, what do you think they need to do? I mean, is there just are they just going to hit with batters in scoring position? Do they got to move the runners more instead of maybe trying to jack the ball? What do the Mets got to do with that?
Sure, timely hitting obviously plays a role in that. Hitting with runners in scoring position, like you said. It depends on what Luis Rojas's philosophy is about small ball versus not giving up outs. There are some guys who refuse to bunt and refuse to play small ball. In the National League, it's a little bit more popular, but the game has obviously shifted towards putting the ball in the air and trying to jack the ball out of the park. Defensive shifts have led to that as well, because guys get frustrated when they have what appears to be sure hits and that turn into outs. And how do they try to counterbalance that? By putting the ball in the air instead of hitting line drives. So that's basically any team. They want to hit with runners in scoring position and get timely hits.
Mac and myself debate this a lot. Mac's all for small ball. I'm not. And this Met team isn't geared for small ball anyway. They're not that good defensively. Just looking around, that's why I see the problem. I mean, the hitting is outstanding.
They could have one of the best lineups in the National League. Yeah, they could rival the Dodgers for the best lineup in the National League.
The pieces just all in all don't look that good. You look at Lindor, he's great, obviously, at shortstop. But, Mccann is fairly good, bad catch and upgrade, but you just look at the overall lineup, and it just doesn't look
defensively.
Yeah, Jack, I agree, because your left fielder, center fielder, third base, and first base position,
Dominic Smith,
are a little bit below average to below average. I mean, you can overcome that with driving the ball, runs in, and trying to overcome that. But do you think the Mets address that this year or maybe next year? I mean, they're going to have to address it eventually, Josh.
Well, right now they have, I think it's good that it's almost better that Robinson Cano was suspended for the year, because they can actually get guys playing in positions, for the majority of the time. They're not constantly moving around. You can lock McNeil into second base. You can lock J.D. Davis into third base. And Dom is going to be playing in left field primarily, but he's going to spell Alonso at first every once in a while. But to be able to consistently play the same positions, hopefully that will help them out defensively a little bit.
Unless there's a DH, I can't imagine Robinson Cano coming back next year. He's going to have 2 years left on his contract at $24 million a year. I was telling Mac the Mets should try to avoid that contract because he didn't live up to the spirit of it by getting suspended, meaning his skills might be declining with the year off now.
Yeah, I'm sure if we could go back 2 years, every Met fan would not want to do that Robinson Cano, Edwin Diaz trade.
Right, but if he is to come back and they don't make a move to Mets, and they're not going to be able to trade him with that contract. He has 2 years left, and it's a very expensive buyout, $48 million, remaining what they could buy. We talk about the moves the Mets have made. What about the move they didn't make that I thought they should have made?
George Springer?
How could they let the Dark Knight, Matt Harvey? They could have re-signed him. He went to the Baltimore Orioles.
He's going to fit in very nicely on the Orioles.
Starter now. He's starting the season as their number 2 starter. He could have been back in the Mets rotation. It could have been like old times.
Yeah, he would.
And then Syndergaard coming.
He actually might have fit in well on the back end of our rotation, which is a question mark. After DeGrom, you could pencil in DeGrom for a quality start basically every time out. But one of the big question marks is how are the other 4 starters right now going to perform behind DeGrom? Because obviously Noah Syndergaard is out till at least June. They're talking about a June comeback, but even when he comes back, what's he going to pitch like? He was pitching to like a 4.5 ERA a couple of years ago. He's got Tommy John surgery. He's got a history of back issues. He's just a big, burly guy. I know I heard you guys talking a few weeks ago about all this intense weight training that these athletes are doing now versus, the consequence of injury as a result of it versus the pliability of a guy like Tom Brady. So he's kind of an injury waiting to happen. Also, we don't know if he's coming back in June for sure. He's been throwing this spring, and it's looking good. But even when he comes back, what's he going to look like? Our number 2 starter right now is Carrasco, who was the other piece in the Lindor trade, and he's already hurt his hamstring in spring training. So he's listed as day-to-day. As we've seen with Kevin Durant on the Nets, hamstring injuries can linger.
Don't tell me about it. I can't go out to jog now. For some reason, my right hamstring is starting to nag, tug on me. I mean, what causes it sometimes, you wonder.
I know. And Carrasco started a throwing program last week. The Mets say he's doing well. Right now, they don't have a starter listed for the second time through the rotation in what his place would be. So they may be looking at an April 7th start against Philadelphia for Carrasco to come back. If not, they're probably going to slide in Joey Lucchesi, who's kind of like their 6th starter right now.
Why did they give up on Steven Matz and let him go to Toronto?
I mean, talk about inconsistent. Steven Matz was really tough to watch as a fan. Some days he would look like an all-star, and then other days he would struggle to get out of the first inning. It was really, really tough to watch his inconsistencies. But as far as Carrasco goes, the Mets are really looking for him to be like his 2017, 2018 self. Again, like 200 innings pitched, hopefully 30 starts, mid-3 ERA, low 1 WHIP, good strikeout to walk ratios. Last year in the shortened season, he was a little wild. His walks were up, so hopefully he could get that under control.
So you guys are you guys play opening day today.
Then that's a bit of a COVID issue.
Yes, and you know something, you're going against a pretty good team to start off with. What are your thoughts? I mean, the Nationals, they're pitching. They just fell off the map. I mean, you go from World Series contenders and champions in a couple of years, and you're down at the bottom of the league. Do you think the Nationals pull it back together this year and give you a tough first game? I mean, you're gonna have 2 quality pitchers going up against each other. Josh, what do you think is going to happen today?
Yeah, with Scherzer on the mound, anything's possible, and he seems to really enjoy beating the Mets specifically. So Scherzer's like the ultimate gamer, but so is DeGrom. So I think it's going to be a good first game. It's probably going to be a low scoring, very close game. I can't say whether or not the Nats are going to be back to their World Series form, but keep in mind, even the year they won the World Series, they got off to an extremely slow start, and they've had a historic, pace over the last 100, 110 games of the season. So one thing in the Mets' favor is the Mets have the best opening day record in baseball. They're starting their 60th season as a franchise. They're 39-20 over the first 59 opening games, best in baseball. The problem is over the final 161 games over their history, they're about 400 games under 500. So the first game isn't an issue; it's the rest of the season.
So what are the predictions? You know, Mac, the season's starting today, so I'll say the Atlanta Braves over the Chicago White Sox in the World Series. That's my prediction for the record. I'm normally close to get it. Last year, I picked the Dodgers over the Rays. So
He did. I can vouch for that. Yes.
You know, and I'm usually get one of the two teams in and come close. So I'm going to call Atlanta over the White Sox.
The preseason over-unders for the Mets and the Braves are one game apart. The over-under for the Mets for wins is 90.5, and the Braves is 91.5. I do think the Braves have a better team than the Mets. I think Ronald Acuna is definitely an MVP candidate. They have the MVP from last year in Freddie Freeman, and a strong pitching staff, strong lineup. Like you said, it's a really competitive division.
Oh, it's a competitive league you got there, and that's going to be a problem for the Mets this year and maybe next year. I think the Mets will get there, within a few years to be competitive. But if you talk to Dodgers, you talk to Padres, you talk to Braves, the National League to me is a lot stronger than the American League, especially at the top, and it's going to be rough for the Mets. I hope the Mets fans don't really think they're going to go out and go to the World Series this year, because that's not going to happen. Anything could happen, I guess. But
wow, you're writing them off. Wow, Matt.
It's opening day. Everyone's got a clean slate.
I agree with that, but I'm just saying it's such a competitive league. It's not the Mets' fault it's a competitive league. That's the way it is. So it would be very hard. I picked the Mets to win the division last year. So that was my pick last year. I'm not picking them to win the division this year either. I just think that it's going to take a while for the Mets. You got a new coach, his second year, young guy. You got a new GM. You got a new owner. They're going to have to figure things out. I mean, good signings. I ain't taking nothing away from them, but 2-3 good signings ain't going to make your team, a powerhouse. You got a little catching up to do. So I think the Mets are going to be competitive this year, no doubt. But to say that,
stay healthy.
Yeah, and your pitching is still a big question mark this year.
The bullpen concerns me a bit. They got Trevor Bauer, excellent relief pitcher.
Trevor May.
Somehow about, Edwin Diaz. He had a bit of a bounce back year last year in the shortened season. He was okay, nothing special, okay. The year before he was atrocious. How he does is going to determine, what kind of run the Mets make at winning the division.
Yeah, something about the Mets pitching staff that really stands out is they're very righty heavy. They only have 3 lefties on their entire staff right now.
Trevor May, I'm sorry. I said Trevor Bauer.
Right.
Trevor May,
right, from Minnesota. And Trevor May, he was the first big signing of the Steve Cohen era after we had found out that we were recouping Robinson Cano's $24 million for this season. And over the last 3 seasons, Trevor May has been one of the best relievers in all of baseball. So let's hope that can continue.
Can you see him transitioning into the closer role? They got him for middle reliever.
I think the closer position belongs to Edwin Diaz right now until
he runs into problems. That's what I mean. If he runs into problems,
I don't know. Has Trevor May ever closed? Seth Lugo right now is day to day. He's they're probably their best arm out of the bullpen right now. But again, day to day right now.
Starter, I guess.
Well, he did, serve in years past as he provided some really great quality emergency starter innings, and he really wanted to be a starter very badly. But he proved to be a great reliever. He was a reliever of the month a couple of years ago, and he's been really, really solid.
They want to be starters because of the money and the contract.
Sure, of course, yeah.
That's the motivating factor, yeah.
No, absolutely. Dylan Betances also has to be much more consistent. Wow. If you had said a couple of years ago that Dylan Betances would practically fall off a cliff, it would be hard to believe.
With this stuff, yeah.
Well,
I would have thought that.
No, not at all. So the back pages of New York are of course, that's where the real rivalry where the Yankees and Mets end up being. I mean, you guys got all the mojo going right now. I mean, the Yankees did pick up a couple pitchers that if they're not injured, there was former Cy Young Award winners. If they can get close to that form again. Again, injuries with the Yankees have killed them, and hopefully they stop trying to lift, 500 bench squat, 500 pounds or something, and they start flexing out a little bit. But I mean, overall, to me, and this is being honest, Josh, I thought the Mets were a better team than the Yankees last year. I thought overall they were a better team. And
last year.
Yes, I thought they were a better team. I really believe they were a better hitting team than the Yankees, and position by position, defensively just as good, especially with our great catcher we have over there. So,
maybe on paper, but as we know, the games aren't played on paper.
Gary Sanchez, Matt.
I know.
Come on.
Okay. I mean, I listen. I think the Mets are on the right track. I think they finally got Will Ponds out of the Mets fans' hair, and they got a owner not only has a lot of money, but is a Mets fan. I think that's really important.
Yeah.
I think. Go ahead.
You can't underestimate how rich Steve Cohen actually is. He's got more than double the money of any other owner in the majors, and he's obviously very willing to spend it. He doesn't mind. So I don't know if that's going to make a difference. I don't know if players around the league see that and are enticed to come play for an owner like that. Certainly, like in the NBA, guys say that playing for an owner like Mark Cuban is really nice because he's such a player's guy. Steve Cohen has $10 billion more than Mark Cuban, just for reference. So you can't underestimate how much money this guy has and how open his pockets seem to be, especially as a Mets fan.
Let's see what happens if the Mets don't win the next couple of years. We'll see the real Steve Cohen. I mean, maybe this is the real Steve Cohen. He's smiling. He's nice. The fans love him. Is he going to get very impulsive and patient? Let's see what happens if these guys don't come through and we don't see the results on the field in the next year or two, how Steve Cohen reacts. I think we will see the results. At the very least, I think the Mets are going to make the playoffs this year, but it's going to be interesting to see what goes on if they underachieve.
But you like them to make the wild card playing game, right?
Card. Yeah.
If they don't win that game, then I don't even really consider that a playoff appearance. I know that it technically is if you make that playing game, but I think once you get into longer than one game series, that's when the real playoffs begin.
Well, you got to see the regular season. If they win in the low 90s and then lose a one-game playoff, it's a successful. I think fans are going to look at it the regular season, how well they did.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think the Mets, I think they have a little bit of a honeymoon period this year. As long as they take a big step forward, I don't think they have to go far in the playoffs. If they make the playoffs and they're really headed in the right direction, with the signings, I think the Mets are going to focus on what's Steve Cohen going to do next.
I think the next thing is the Conforto contract. Because he's he's looking for an extension, and for him something like $20 million a year seems about right.
That's going to be tough because Steve Boras is his agent, and
Scott Boras
likes the guys to play it out completely to free agency. If I were known, I wouldn't even deal with Steve Boras.
Scott Boras.
I don't deal with him, and I'd move on.
Well, it's tough, and Zach Scott, the new GM, he's kind of in a tough spot also because he wasn't their first pick for GM, obviously, and I'm not sure if he even carries the acting
Sandy
GM.
Alderson has the final.
The president.
Even though he's not technically the GM. I mean, officially the GM. I think Sandy Alderson, speaks to Steve Cohen, and that's where the decisions, I think, are made.
Just one more thing to talk about with this season with the pitching rotation. Marcus Stroman, He opted out of the season last year for family reasons, just for health. He lives with an elderly grandmother and some immunocompromised people. He accepted the qualifying offer of $18.9 million this year, which is rare. Guys don't.
No one else would have signed him. He's overrated.
Well, that's what I agree with you. Yes, I agree with you. But at the same time, he's kind of betting on himself playing for a new contract. I'm trying to spin zone this into a positive, right? Because I was very underwhelmed when the Mets acquired him from the Blue Jays. He had a great ERA. He had a bad record, which we know the two don't necessarily correlate. But I was underwhelmed when we got him. He was an all-star, and with the Blue Jays.
Yeah.
But he had a 4-2 record with the Mets 2 years ago, but he hasn't played now in 2 years, and it's going to be interesting. Like I said, he's playing for a new contract. Let's see.
Josh, I understand that he made that decision to not play, but he didn't make that decision until he could get the contract terms together. So he waited an extra amount of time to make sure he still wasn't released. There was something with the contract that he had to stay for a longer time, and he could have opted out before then. And I kind of looked at that and said, if you're really worried about this and you really think you're that good, opt out now. Don't worry about what the contract says that you'll be on the roster next year. I mean, it was kind of mishmash. Mishmash, I love that word. Mishmash the way he did that. Josh, you know what I mean?
Yeah, these guys got to take care of themselves, though. Their careers are only so short, and what's a guy to do when you've only made $50 million in your career?
I know it's tough. The taxi rides are very expensive, so I do understand that. Josh, I want to thank you for coming in. I mean, it's great having somebody in here with a lot of knowledge about the Mets. Like I said, I've been following
guys
since 1969. I've been following them. I do not hate the Mets. I do follow them almost as much as maybe the Red Sox. Because
how could you hate the Mets as a Yankee fan? How could you hate that?
He hate the Mets, Mac. He just doesn't really care about them. After enough pressure, Mac had to, have Met news on the show here.
Exactly. Yes.
Do not listen to Jack, never ever, and even off the air, please. It'd be a great thing for you not to do. So, we really appreciate you coming on again. Hopefully, you'll be back up again as soon as you can, Josh. We'll make room for you, especially with the season starting. A lot of great stuff's going to happen this year for both New York teams, I think, and it should be a lot of fun. So, again, thank you for coming in, Josh.
Thank you. It was fun.
Josh.
I enjoyed.
So there you go, Josh Rubin, Mets expert. What information he provided us.
Are you waiting for the Mets to be 7 games out of first place and then invite them back and then say what's wrong with the Mets?
I would never do that, Jack, and I'm going to tell you why.
Excitement. Listen, the Mets are exciting. Now,
yes.
Signing Francisco Lindor, they mean business. But let's see, we got to get the results on the field.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's going to take, again, I don't think the Mets fans should get very excited right now because it's going to take a couple years for that system to get working in. And I say in a couple years, Shaq, they're up there contending. They're up there amongst the best teams contending. I really believe that. But I just don't think just because you got a lot of guy with a lot of money means you're going to have a good team either. I mean, money comes into the play, but I'm telling you right now, your team has to be put together smartly, and the players got to get together and like each other. There's a whole lot of things to build in a team. It's not just money. So, I will see what happens. Okay, well, thank you.
Yeah, I'm nodding. Listen, I said it starts today, opening day today.
Exciting, Jack. Exciting. There's so much.
Teams in that division, the Braves, the Mets, the Nationals, the Phillies, the Marlins. One of them is going to disappoint us out of the 5. And
really
not have a good season. But who knows which of the 5 it's going to be. I like Atlanta there.
We didn't even mention the Marlins last year, Jack. Look what they did. I mean, come on.
Well, Marlins were 31-29, but it was a shortened season. How would it have played off over the full season? And the Marlins, are they still a developing team? There are a lot of people who feel they're going to play under 500 this year.
Well,
last year they just overachieved a little bit. They're still
we'll see.
Raw.
We'll
But
see.
listen, maybe the Marlins on an upswing, and they did make the playoffs last year, and then they won a playoff round, in which they
That's
beat
right.
the Chicago Cubs.
That's right. And they got a couple people that have been in baseball over there running things for a while. So they've been in baseball for a while. So it should be very interesting.
Yeah.
Season and a very tough division in a very tough league. And we didn't even get to the women's.
And I like the Blue Jays. I don't like to say this, but I'm picking the Blue Jays to win the division over the Yankees.
I can't hear you, Jack.
Sneaking is a wild card.
Jack, stop with the Blue Jays already. I'm tired of hearing about the Blue Jays. What the heck do the Blue Jays got that the Yankees don't got? Come on now. So, anyway, folks, thanks for joining us tomorrow. We'll have a great show for you. We have Byron Williams, the NFL analyst that comes out every week, former NFL wide receiver. We got Keith Angle. I'm going to see you again this week. I've seen him about 5 times this week already on there, Jack. So, he'll be back in tomorrow with all the Yankee, Nick, Patriot news. Great show. Always love having those guys in. Jack, great having you back. Hopefully
Great to be back. Opening day today. There's excitement in the air. Opening day.
You can't beat it, Jack. So, folks, we'll see you tomorrow, same time, same channel. Join us, please, and have a great day.